Minneapolis, Minnesota, a city known for its lakes, its neighborhoods, its history of resilience, and in recent years, its struggles with tragedy. In the heart of this community, on what began as an ordinary school day, a story of unimaginable pain unfolded. A story that intertwines the devotion of a mother, the innocence of a child, and the cruelty of a moment that no family should ever endure. She was a nurse, a caretaker, a woman whose life was defined by compassion and service. Her mission was to heal, to bring calm to chaos, and to mend wounds both physical and unseen. Every day, she stepped into hospitals with the quiet resolve of someone who carried the weight of others' pain on her shoulders. And at home, she was more than just a nurse. She was a mother, a protector, a source of comfort for her 12-year-old daughter, a bright-eyed girl whose laughter could soften the hardest of days. But on that day, in the corridors of a Minneapolis school, fate dealt its most merciless hand. The sound of gunfire shattered the stillness. Screams ricocheted through the hallways. In seconds, a place of learning transformed into a battlefield of fear. Children hid in classrooms, teachers locked doors, parents rushed toward the unknown with frantic hearts. And among the first to respond was the nurse, not only because it was her duty, but because it was her instinct. She ran toward the chaos, toward the victims, toward the wounded. Her hands steady, her heart pounding, she began treating children, patching bleeding wounds, trying to calm trembling voices, holding on to life as it slipped away from fragile bodies. But then through the haze of blood and fear came a moment that would stop her world. Her daughter, her own 12-year-old child, had been among those shot. The mother who had dedicated her life to saving others now faced the nightmare no parent can comprehend. As her trembling hands worked on victims around her, her heart was collapsing inside. The professional and the personal collided in a way that was almost unbearable. She was no longer just a nurse, she was a mother staring into the abyss of her greatest fear. This is the cruel paradox of tragedy, that in a single heartbeat, roles collapse and duty becomes agony, that a healer whose oath is to preserve life must confront the shattering loss of the one life she cherished most. The city would later hear her story. News outlets spoke of her courage, of her pain, of the cruel irony of a mother treating victims in the very moment her own child was among them. The community grieved with her. Candlelight vigils were held. Neighbors whispered prayers into the cold Minnesota night. But in those first hours, before the world knew her name, before headlines spread, there was only a mother and the haunting silence of what she had lost. The days that followed were a blur of mourning. Minneapolis schools were draped in sorrow. Lockers became memorials covered with flowers, letters, and photos. The nurse, once a quiet figure in the halls of hospitals, was now thrust unwillingly into the national spotlight. Her daughter's face, smiling and young, became a symbol of innocence lost. Reporters spoke of statistics, of gun violence, of politics, but for her, none of it was abstract. For her, it was the empty chair at the dinner table, the half-finished homework on a desk, the sound of laughter forever silenced. She was asked how she found the strength to keep working, and her answer was one born of both pain and resolve, because I have two. For every child I treat, I see a glimpse of my daughter, and I will not let her memory fade. It was not just grief, it was purpose. Her healing hands, once motivated by duty, were now guided by something far deeper, love and remembrance. Every wound she closed was an act of defiance against the cruelty that had taken her child. Every life saved was a quiet tribute to the daughter she could not save. But grief is never simple. The world debated around her. Politicians argued over gun reform. Activists marched in the streets. Families who had lost children joined together in calls for change. Yet she remained caught between two worlds, the professional one that demanded composure and the personal one that ached for release. In the end, her story became more than just one of tragedy. It became a mirror. A mirror reflecting a society grappling with the reality of violence in its schools, the burden carried by its healers, and the unthinkable suffering endured by its parents. Years from now, when the details of this particular shooting fade into history, her story will still echo. Not because of statistics or headlines, but because it embodies the most human truth, that love and loss are inseparable, that courage is not always loud, it is sometimes silent, found in the steady hands of a nurse who chooses to keep healing, even when her own heart is broken. And so we are left with a question that lingers long after the news cycles end, long after the candles of vigil nights burn out. How many more mothers must endure this? How many more children must be remembered through photographs instead of embraces? Her story is not only about tragedy, it is about the weight of memory, the resilience of the human spirit, and the haunting reminder that even in the darkest moments, love does not end, it endures. This was not just the story of a nurse, nor only of a mother. It is the story of a nation reckoning with its own soul, and the timeless lesson that no act of healing, no matter how small, is ever in vain.